Hi, I'm Jez. This is Chasing Cars with some bad news. This is not the replacement for the much-liked Kia Stinger sedan. The good news, however, is that it's a bold-looking replacement for the Cerato small car, and it's even got a cool name, K4. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
The dramatically different styling of this K4 starts at the front with vertical star map lighting, headlights, DRLs, borrowed from the likes of the EV9, EV5 electric SUVs. So K4 is not electric, disappointing or not, depending on your point of view. Petrol engines that carry over, more details on those later. Let's go around to the side of the car. So K4, it's longer, it's wider, it's a little bit lower than the Cerato, so much sleeker looks. Wheel sizes, well, we've got 18s here. This is the flagship GT line, by the way. Base model comes on 16s, and you've got 17-inch wheels for the mid-range models. Just coming back towards the back of the car, we've got hidden door handles at the rear. I really like this treatment here. We've got a right angle for the end of the daylight opening at the side. This is an actual window, and this is a great feature for me as well. Flying buttress style C-pillar. Okay, round to the back. Then that at the rear, we've got vertical tail lights as well, mirroring those at the front. Now, design suggests that it was possibly a liftback sedan design like the Skoda Octavia, which would be really cool. Unfortunately, a little bit less boring. A normal boot lid, and shame about the gooseneck hinges that will crush your luggage. But look, fairly wide aperture. Boot space up about 6 litres over the Cerato sedan, 508 litres, so more than a Corolla sedan boot capacity, for example, but less than some others. Octavia that we mentioned there, 600 litres and a much wider, taller aperture for getting in there. For what it's worth, much bigger boot space than you got with the Stinger sedan, which was just over 400 litres. And you got little pull levers here, just for folding down the 60-40 split rear seat backs. The K4 gains some new colour options over Cerato, including our test car's Wave Blue and a new pale green hero colour called Honeydew. And for those who prefer 5-door body styles, which most Cerato buyers did, a K4 hatchback is coming in late 2025. Okay, let's talk about pricing. Now, the K4 is of course still cheaper than the Stinger, which was a large sedan, and this, well, it's not really a small sedan, it's more mid-sized sedan now, 4.7 metres long. Prices are still up relatively significantly though for this car over the Cerato, so the entry up more than $3,500, so a bit higher entry than the i30 sedan, which is the twin to this car, by the way. The mid-range Sport and Sport Plus models, they're also up by a bit more than that. And then you've got this GT line. It's up more than $6,000 over the previous Cerato GT flagship. So again, like some of the other models, a little bit higher than the equivalent i30 sedan, which in the case of the GT line would be the N line. K4 is more upmarket than the Cerato, that's for sure, inside the cabin. A lot of that is achieved by the triple screens on the dash, another borrowing from the EV9 and EV5 Kias. So we have a 12.3-inch infotainment touchscreen here in the centre. The middle of the screens, it's your climate controls, though we do also have physical controls down here, so a big thumbs up to Kia for that. And then you have another 12.3-inch display ahead of the driver. Now, Kia has introduced a couple of new things for K4. So we've got over-the-air updates, so owners can have software for various things in the infotainment system updated as needed. There is Kia Connect, the phone app, so you can change things or prepare your cabin for different climates before you get into the car. This is the GT line, so it is the poshest car in the range, and we've got these artificial leather seats. So you also get those on the Sport Plus model, but they don't get the GT line embossment here on the seat backs. Something else that also makes the GT line stand out, you get a steering wheel that is two-tone, like the seats, 3 spokes rather than 2 spokes like other models. And artificial leather that is wrapped. Unbelievably, every other K4 comes with a plastic steering wheel, which is not very good. As the GT line, there are more standard features than any other K4, as you would expect, aside from this fancier looking steering wheel. So the steering wheel has heating, electric driver's seat with heating and ventilation. We've got LED interior lighting. There's a Harman Kardon audio, sunroof, and what else? You also get a wireless phone charger. You kind of think that should be available on other K4 trim grades as well. There's improved safety equipment through the whole K4 range. That's all very well and good, but I'd like to see even more convenience features added to K4 models. So just mentioned the phone charger, but you know, even this GT line, no electric passenger adjustment up front. The sunroof is only a regular small sunroof rather than the panoramic style. And for some reason, Kia still persists with window switches that only have auto up-down operation for the driver. Although the K4 has taken Kia upmarket in the small car class, it's not difficult to find cheap, scratchy plastics in the K4. And that's certainly even truer in the rear seat because the door cards are hard there where they're soft up front. Also easy to smudge the door armrests front and rear, so that's not ideal. The headlining, well, that's quite nice in the GT line, but it feels cheap in lower grades. What about space? Well, the K4 wheelbase is a little bit longer than the Cerato sedans, and Kia reckons there's nearly 6 centimetres of extra knee space here. So yeah, you can see visibly plenty of legroom. Headroom is down a touch on the Cerato sedan, and that doesn't feel brilliant. I'm only 5'8". Shoulder room, that's also a little bit narrower than before. Practical amenities, centre armrest, couple of cup holders, dedicated bottle holders in the doors. We've got vents and netted seat pouch over here, and a couple of USB-C ports to go with others that you've got up front as well. Okay, drivetrain, so I mentioned that the K4, it's not electric, it is petrol engines. Now, I guess Kia is devoting so much budget and other resources to its electric vehicles, all its EV models, 9, update to the EV6, EV5, new EV3 is coming. So I guess they're really not investing a lot in combustion engines, because that really tells with the K4. Both engines are carryover from Cerato, and neither are fantastic. So let's start with the 2-litre normally aspirated 4-cylinder, 112 kilowatts. And you know, K4, it's a bit heavier, a bit bigger than Cerato. And you know, if it wasn't really sufficient in the Cerato, it most definitely isn't sufficient in the K4. You know, we're not driving that at the moment. We've got the GT line, so we'll come on to that in a minute. But in the Sport Plus that we drove, it's not an unpleasant engine, but it really just lacks torque. And the 6-speed auto it's mated to is a bit slow-witted, struggles to figure out that it doesn't have a lot of torque to work with. So you end up having to work the engine really hard, which is probably why it's actually less economical than the alternative engine, which is a 1.6-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder, which is standard in the GT line, but in the GT line model only, which is a bit of a shame. Now, this 1.6 turbo, so it's better on the outputs, 142 kilowatts, 265 newton meters, still nothing special in the outputs department. The GT line, this engine get an 8-speed auto. That's obviously that's a change up from those of you that know the Cerato GT that had a 7-speed dual clutch auto. The 8-speed, well look, it's difficult to know how much better it is than the 6-speed in the other K4 models, because it does have the advantage of having more torque to work with, but it certainly seems a little bit more decisive at changing gears. In terms of performance, yeah, look, if you're just driving around normally and in either eco or the normal modes, which we can play around with on this central steering wheel button, the responses are still quite laggy, so it can be just frustrating even when you're commuting in this K4 GT line. So what we're going to do is select sport mode, see if that... Okay, that responses are a little bit better there. And what the GT line also gets over other K4 models, pedal shift levers, which is good. And we have found that if you leave the auto to make its own changes on a windy road, it is a little bit slow to change. So let's go with the pedals. We'll move the gear lever across to plus minus. That's the wrong way round, by the way. It should be downshift pushing forward on the lever. That's a sort of personal preference for most of the Chasing Cars team, I should say. So now here we go. Let's see what the engine's got. Oh yeah, now we've got response. Now the K4 GT line feels like a quickish sports sedan, tight hairpin, wait to get on the throttle. Now the 1.6 turbo, it growls a bit when you're just driving around on low revs, is quite nice. So while we've got much better response here and certainly a better turn of pace than we get in the 2-litre K4s, the engine's not particularly exciting. You know, it never really has been in other vehicle applications that we've tried it in. Of course, there are various Hyundais that feature this 1.6T, including the i30 Sedan N-Line, another variant further down in that range, which is the platform buddy, of course, to the K4. Fuel economy is officially 7.4 litres per 100 kilometres for the 2-litre and 6.7 for the GT line. So like I said earlier, it's a little bit of an irony that the more powerful engine is also the more economical. The big question for the K4, will it get the hybrid drivetrain, petrol-electric, that is available in the i30 Sedan? Kia Australia certainly says it's got its hands up for it, and if they do bring that, you imagine the fuel economy will be similar to the Hyundai's, which is 3.9 litres per 100 kilometres. Last key difference we'll talk about between this GT line K4 and the other K4s, where lower specs get a torsion beam setup and 17-inch wheels for mid-range K4s, the Sport and the Sport Plus. The GT line is a multi-link suspension, so very much just like the Cerato lineup was before. So the GT was the model that got the multi-link. Does that make for better handling? Well, really we're looking at ride and handling in a broader context, and certainly while you've got the faster performance from the turbo engine and the GT line, the ride is firmer. It's certainly noisier from the 18-inch wheels that are bigger and also wear sportier, lower profile rubber. So the Sport Plus K4 we drove, that was actually my preference over the GT line for driving every day, because the ride was quieter, more supple, and generally a bit more absorbent. All right, let's go. Yeah, certainly no hot sedan as K4, but got plenty of grip into the hairpin now. On the brakes, the brakes are really good actually. You can really modulate into second gear, see what the traction's like. Little chirp from the tyres. That was actually pretty decent grip out of that hairpin. And now into the twisty bits. Little bit of roll, but this K4 actually handles quite tidily. Some little moments of torque steer out of the slower corners. Nothing too dramatic. The steering, I would say, the weighting, there's a little bit of inconsistency around the straight ahead that I've noticed at lower speeds, but certainly like once you're getting stuck into some twists on a country road, I quite like the steering. It's fairly direct, good weighting. The K4, so it points keenly enough into the corners, decent turning. Oh. But even with paddles, it won't let you downshift from third to second when you want it to. So that's naughty. Why give the driver manual control if you're not going to let them have manual control? Annoying.
It's ultimately tricky to work out the GT line's driving character because it feels confused about whether it wants to be a pseudo-luxury sedan or sporty four-door, and it doesn't really nail either ambition.
We've driven more than 1,000 kilometres in this K4 GT line and quite a few Ks in the Sport Plus. And there are a lot of things to like about this Cerato replacement. It certainly doesn't feel like a small car anymore. It's grown up in many ways beyond the dimensions. But there are some holes in the spec throughout the range, and really this car deserves much better engines to match these terrific looks. And it certainly doesn't quell our desire to see a next generation Kia Stinger. Thanks for watching Chasing Cars.